Hello everybody, my name is Kevin King and welcome back to the channel. If you like these creepy Reddit stories, you are in the right place. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a like, comment down below what is your favorite story, and don't forget to subscribe because it does help the channel. But without wasting any more time, enjoy the video. The first one is honestly the most convincing. So, around when I was 8 to 7, my cat had died. Nicest cat you'd ever meet. Walk up to you and just sit on your lap. He had something with his jaw, I can't remember what, but I know it was so bad he couldn't eat. My dad eventually decided to put him down. Around a month later my dad got me a new kitten. Another very sweet cat, but a bit more shy and would probably scratch you if you try to pick him up. So one day I was walking up to my room to head to bed. I'm about to walk in when I see something. 2 eyes on my bed. My cat is right behind me. It can't be my cat, but they had that feline shine. I remember I just stood there for 10 seconds just staring at the eyes until I could make out the shape. You know when a cat loafs? Gets into that bread-like shape? That's the shape that I had saw clear as day. I looked down at my cat. It hadn't moved. Same spot. Staring at the bed too. I flipped on the light, of course. Nothing. Nothing besides an indent in the bed, shape of a full-grown cat. Not a kitten, a full-grown cat. I also like to add, the eyes didn't move, just stared directly at me. The thing is, I remember not feeling afraid. I kinda just thought, what the hell? I looked over the clock that was sitting on my desk. It flashed big red letters at me. 11:28 p.m. They read. I figured I did enough work for one day and shut off my computer before rising from my desk and pulling a hoodie over my head as I left my bedroom. I walked into the living room to find my pug, Boomer, sleeping on the couch. I gently woke him up and said to him, "Hey bud, wanna go outside?" He was quick to stand up and make his way to the back door so I could take him outside to do his business before he went to sleep. I pulled on my boots and opened the door as me and Boomer stepped outside, causing the snow under us to crunch beneath our weight. Boomer almost immediately took off running when something caught his eye that I didn't notice. I began walking slowly across my backyard, occasionally checking on the dog to make sure he wasn't up to no good. I saw a big fluffy snowflake fall from the sky, slowly. My eyes followed it all the way to the ground when it landed near something I had never seen before. There were 4 long, skinny lines in the snow, one single line, and then at the end of the line were 3 other lines that were all connected by the main line. They almost seemed like footprints of some kind, but they were too skinny and much too long to belong to a human. My mind began to wonder what type of animal this could have been. That's when I noticed that the prints seemed to go in the direction right behind me. I turned, half expecting to see a long, lanky figure that came from the imagination of a scared 6-year-old child. But to no surprise, nothing. They just led towards my neighbor's fence. As I stared, I heard the running of my dog come towards me from behind. I turned just in time to see his googly eyes, ears flying in the wind, and a wide smile on his face as he panted from running around. I laughed as he crashed into my legs, causing me to stumble a little, but I managed to get my balance back. I grabbed a small amount of snow and rolled it into a ball before playfully catching Boomer's attention with it, and then throwing it. He chased it and got confused when it hit the snow. I chuckled and he dug and sniffed at the landing site. I turned back around to face the footprints and curiosity got the best of me. I followed them to my neighbor's fence and scaled the tall wooden boards, perching myself so I could see the other side of the fence. I didn't go into their backyard, and what I saw where the tracks had led me shocked me. Absolutely nothing. I looked back to my backyard to confirm this is where the tracks led. It was like they walked into the fence and vanished. A particularly cold gust of wind came over me, upsetting my balance on the fence a little and sending a shiver down my spine. I climbed off the fence and said to my dog, "Alright, Boomy, are you ready to go back inside?" He tilted his head to the side for a moment before making his way towards the door, back into our house, and I soon followed. I got ready for bed and laid there tossing and turning, my mind racing with questions and thoughts on the prints. Eventually I just decided to start Googling, of course to no avail. The closest thing I could find to prints I saw were that of a bunny, but even those were nowhere near what I had seen just outside my walls. The only way I could describe what I saw was if you took a clothes hanger, from your closet and made 4 connected imprints. Very long and absurdly skinny. My bedroom is on the back of the house. In fact, the closest area of the house to where the tracks were. I leaned across my bed and opened the curtains. I looked down at the snow to look for the prints again, but nothing. My gaze wandered over where I'd seen them. I saw my footprints and Boomer's footprints, but no animal footprints. I tore my eyes from the backyard, blaming the fact that the prints were gone on the dark lighting outside. I tried to calm my slightly undone nerves and lay down in bed and lifted my big fluffy blankets over my shoulders. Even though my mind was still racing, I was able to doze off sooner or later. The next night, me and Boomer did a ritual similar to the one we did the previous night. However, on this night, I went to check the footprints in the snow, but they were not there, nor were they gone. My eyes went wide when I saw the footprints were on the side of the house facing the wall. No other footprints, just 2, right next to each other facing the house. It was the wall to my bedroom. It was also the same wall that had a window that looked directly into my bedroom. I looked around, scanning my surroundings, unnerved. Me and Boomer went back inside sooner rather than later. I knew sleeping tonight was going to be harder than normal, so I took a few minutes to search my house for a bottle of melatonin to help get the job done. I climbed into bed and plugged my phone into its charger. I opened the curtains and gave one last glance outside. I looked down and of course I saw no footprints. I sighed and closed my curtain and curled up in bed and tried to fall asleep. I'm not sure how long it took me to fall asleep, but I woke up a few hours later, probably between 2 or 3 o'clock. And in my half-sleep state, I opened the curtains again but saw nothing. It was too dark outside to see anything. I woke up again shortly after that. Right now as I'm writing this, it's nearly 4:30 a.m. So why am I telling you all of this when I could be sleeping? This is why. I woke up around 3:45 a.m. and opened my curtains yet again. I took a second to look outside and notice how pretty the stars were. I looked at the light snowfall and all of the street lights in the distance. That's when it hit me. How did I not see any of this before? It hadn't even hit me previously in my sleepy state, but when I first looked outside, I would have seen this, but I didn't. It was completely and utterly black, as if someone covered my window in black paint. My mind wandered more and more, and I had to assume that something was outside of my window. My tired and anxious mind made my body tremble at the thought that when I had looked out my window, was there someone staring back at me? To make matters even worse, my bedroom is on the 2nd floor of the house. So I guess the reason I'm telling you all of this is to get an answer of some kind. My mind has traveled from nightmares, hallucinations, and even creepypasta that I know of, none of which seem to give me any answers. I'm asking for your advice. What do I do when my dog needs to go outside in the morning? Is it safe? Of course I can keep my dog inside and clean up after him, but I can't stay in my home forever. The doctors had settled in so quickly that it almost took me by surprise. As I walked home from work, I could feel a sense of dread rising in me. I had been out late the night before and had hoped that the sun would provide some solace. But despite the bright sky, the shadows seemed to linger, and my fears began to take shape. The trees around me swayed in the wind, their branches reaching out to me as if they were beckoning me to stay. I felt a chill as the leaves brushed against my skin, and I quickened my pace. I felt like I was being watched, and I knew that something was out there waiting for me. I felt in my pocket for my keys, clutching them tightly in my hand. I was almost home. I could see the streetlight in the distance, shining its golden light down the streets. I let out a deep breath as I started to make my way towards it. But then I heard it, a low growl coming from the bushes. I could feel my heart racing as I fought the urge to run. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. And then I saw it. A large wolf, its eyes glowing in the night. I sucked in my breath, frozen in fear. The animal seemed to be just as surprised to see me as I was to see it. It slowly took a step towards me, its lips peeled back in a fierce snarl. I could see the saliva dripping from its fangs, and felt my body go cold. It was then that I knew I had to act. I slowly put my hand in my pocket, and slowly pulled out the pocket knife that I always kept with me. I slowly opened it, and pointed it at the wolf. To my surprise, the creature did not move. It just stood there, watching me, with its cold, calculating eyes. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing and my hands trembling. I knew that I had to do something. But what? I felt a sudden urge to run, but I knew that would only make the situation worse. I had to stay and face the beast. I tightened my grip on the knife and slowly stepped forward. The wolf seemed to sense my determination, and it only took a step back. I could feel my courage growing, but I steeled myself whatever might come. I took another step forward, and the wolf retreated a few more steps. I kept advancing, and the wolf kept retreating until we were almost at the street light. The creature stopped and stood its ground, its eyes never leaving me. I could feel the tension in the air as we faced each other in the half light, both of us unsure of what would happen next. I kept the knife pointed at the wolf, my grip only slightly loosening. I knew that if I made the wrong move, I could end up in trouble. And then, in the distance, I heard a sound. It was a sound that I had heard before. It was the sound of a dog barking. As the sound grew louder, the wolf seemed to shrink in size, its snarls fading away. I kept the knife pointed at it as I heard the sound coming closer and closer. And then a man appeared in the light. He was an older man, his hair graying and his face weathered by time. He was carrying a large stick and a small dog at his side. He looked at me with understanding eyes and said, "It's okay. I'm here now." I slowly lowered the knife, my hands shaking as the man approached me. He looked me up and down, his gaze lingering on the knife in my hand. He shook his head before turning to the wolf, holding out his hand and murmuring words that I could not understand. The wolf cowered before him, its head bowed in submission. The man turned back to me and said, "It's all right. He won't hurt you now. He was just scared." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and I slowly nodded my head in appreciation. I put the knife away and thanked the man before continuing on my way home. As I walked, I wondered what had just happened. I had been so sure that there was danger, but it had all just been in my head. It was a reminder of how unpredictable life can be. But despite the unsettling feeling that had been looming over me, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. I had faced my fears and come out the other side unscathed, and I knew that no matter what else might come my way, I would be ready. I don't usually share anything like this on social media, but to cut to the chase, on Friday my grandparents and I were talking about random stuff in the dining room. It was 1:40 in the afternoon, and it was just the three of us. My mother and brother were at work. Someone knocks on the front door, so naturally my grandfather gets up and makes his way to the door. It's unusual for anyone to not use the doorbell. My grandmother questions my grandfather, who was at the door when he came back. He said there was no one. He looked around and didn't see any delivery vehicles or people walking away. We have a very long pathway to our door from the driveway. I got chills when he mentioned that because my grandmother began to freak out, explaining to him that opening doors after someone knocks and no one is there is usually letting a spirit in or whatever into the house. My family's religious, by the way. What gets me really concerned, he said that that's been happening for a couple of months, and each time he checks the door, there's always no one. We've been having paranormal activity happening around the house in the past week and a half, and I wonder, is that why we're having these problems now? Is whatever my grandfather has let into the house, is it now revealing itself? I've really been on edge from all the other experiences that have been happening around the house, and my family has tried many things to guide it away. Along with the other experiences, other than this one, at some point I'll share, this entity has been following me around. Some experiences has happened at my job and at friends' houses that I can't explain. Let me give a little backstory about where I grew up. I grew up in the 1980s in a home that was built in the 1930s and can be described as a farmhouse style, I suppose. A 2-story home with an unfinished basement and second story that was also unfinished, forcing my parents to house my sister and myself in one bedroom. This was at the same time that the youngest, me, would be utilized as a family remote control, turning the giant knob on the TV through the few channels that actually got reception. But, seems contrite to say now, it was really a simpler time. A time that passed by far too quickly. But, looking back at the house, always made me feel uneasy. My sister Mary was one of the first siblings to move into her own room as she was getting older, and who wants to share a room with much younger siblings? The memories from this revolve around Mary. She would wake up at night running into my parents' bedroom, saying, "Someone is outside my window," and my father, being the patriarch of the family, would march outside and find nothing. There was a staircase outside her window, so it was within the realm of possibility that someone could be peeping into her room. This then evolved into someone walking into her bedroom and sitting on her bed, and a female figure floating in the corner of her room. To say this was unsettling to her was an understatement, and hearing her yell for my parents at 3 a.m. every night was disturbing. Eventually these occurrences subsided, and my older sister Anne moved upstairs. Now the upstairs was the wide open room, used as a ping pong room back in the day. There was a front room that was used as a bedroom that was really not suitable for a bedroom, but Anne was hell-bent on making this her space. Anne was an artist, and her style bordered on gothic fantasy horror. She created bizarre artwork and lived a troubled life. She was a tortured soul with her own mental health issues that evolved as she got older. But now in her mid to late teens, she made the second floor her domain. She then would tell tales of footsteps on the attic stairs, walking up to closed bedroom door, and then back down. She recounted being awoken by someone grabbing her foot, as someone that was not there. When work was being done on the front room, my siblings and myself were downstairs and could hear someone upstairs whistling and hammering. Thinking that one of the workers was still upstairs late, we opened the doors to the second floor and walked up, still hearing hammering. We approached the bedroom door and opened it, and nothing, except papers sitting on a ladder, flew off into the air with no obvious source of wind or pressure to have created the ability to shift these papers. We ran downstairs and sat nervously in the kitchen until our parents came home. Life again passed by, with my sisters and myself becoming frequent residents of our parents' home as we grew up, sometimes through necessity, having to return to the family home. For me, it was after college, and I decided to move in upstairs and make the bedroom mine. It had been somewhat finished, with the front room still unfinished, although a cool open space. It was kind of my space, and I painted the room and moved in some furniture, and I bought an apartment I had briefly lived in prior to moving back home. It was comfortable, but only during the waking hours. I would sleep on my bed, which was in front of the door to the room, and soon the night terrors began. I felt like something was watching me. I felt a really bad energy where the bed was, and soon moved to sleeping on my couch against the wall of the room. But every night, without fail, the shadow from the closet, an open closet on the opposite side of the room, would come to me and, for lack of a better term, attack me, or what felt like an attack. I felt like a spiritual attack, and it would happen repeatedly all night. I would fall asleep, and this feeling would happen, and it would feel like sleep, attack, attack, and loud banging in the front room. I mean, it sounded like a large group of people gathering and moving about. I eventually moved back into my childhood bedroom to sleep and used the upstairs only when awake or watching television. Now, after many years, the upstairs remains almost unchanged from, dare I say, 30 years ago. My older sister Anne died in the one bathroom downstairs, and my father died in the childhood bedroom as I cared for him during his final days. My mother continues to reside there, and I have decided to move back into my childhood home to help care for my mom. I have come to expect sounds, and they hardly frighten me now that I am older. I fell asleep on my dad's recliner I purchased for him before he died, and I was woken at midnight by 3 loud knocks and a voice that sounded like my voice. I have been downstairs at an area that was my father's man cave, and felt a cold chill that I could reproduce just walking through the same area. The hairs on my arm would stand up, as would the hairs on the back of my head. The house is very active, and at night, the house speaks. I do not particularly enjoy staying the night, but it is a sacrifice I'm making for my mom. I just never thought I'd be returning to that house to live at my age. There have been so many other instances that I did not include in this post. My father seen a woman in the corner of the bedroom before he died. My mother also seen the figure in the living room floating in the corner, as well as my sister seen my grandmother at her bed after she had died. I can't capture all the instances in this post, but I have come to believe that this home is where many hearts continue to live and make themselves known. We moved about 4 months ago into a temporary place while we built our forever home. This is an older, single-wide trailer, probably 1980s, that has been updated inside. It's cheaper, so it helps with building expenses. Anyways, my son's room is on the end of the trailer and ours on the other. We frequently go to the bathroom, throughout the night next to his room. Several times now we have went to use the restroom and heard my son giggling and talking to himself in complete darkness by himself. Sometimes you can hear what he is saying. That tickles. You're funny, etc. Now my significant other says he has heard him around 3 to 4 a.m. most times. I have heard him around 5 to 6 a.m. My son stays with my ex-husband half the week. We have 50-50 custody, and when my son isn't here, we have heard things from his room. My significant other has heard giggles and muffled talking. Toys randomly come on. However, we always find illogical reasons to dismiss it. We live next to a 24-hour gas station, about 20 yards from my son's window, and figure it's people talking over there. Plus we have 2 cats that may sneak in his room and knock toys on. That being said, this morning my son told me there is a boy in his room and he tickles him. Totally freaked me out. Backstory on my son: he is a 5-year-old and is diagnosed with autism. He was non-verbal until last year. We do struggle with complex conversations, so asking him to describe what he sees just doesn't work well yet. He's a very happy, loving child. Since moving, he seems to be acting the same, just these issues at night where he is awake, which is causing him to be sleepy during the day. So, ghost? Imaginary friend? Just hoping someone has had a similar situation. Our home is projected to be done in September, so we will be here for several more months. Thanks. Update. So I've been doing some digging and talking throughout our small community. Apparently a 10-year-old girl passed away from cancer in the home. Also, many drowning deaths have occurred in the river that runs behind our home. Also, a car accident in front of the home where a woman was killed. I received a call from a couple who had recently purchased a new home and was having strange events occur in their barn. The backstory of this property is that the original home was built in 1840s. The barn was added a few years later, but there was no record. The original house burned down in 1976, and a new one was built on the old foundation in 1981. Upon arriving, I noticed the property was impeccably kept, and although it was very rural and set far back off of the road, a driveway was added and paved to the house. This was unusual for the area and indicated to me a level of sophistication to the owners. In other words, they were most likely not from a rural area. I was greeted at the door and invited in by a young couple that I would guess in their mid-20s. Their home was as well kept and clean on the inside as it had been on the out. We chatted for a few moments and they insisted that I see the barn. I noted that there was absolutely no feelings or atmosphere to the house, then followed them to the kitchen and back door. There was a kiddie fence blocking the entrance to the kitchen, preventing 4 miniature goats from exiting the kitchen. This was a shock since I had judged these people by what I had witnessed up until this point. When asked about the goats in the house, I was told that they had no choice because whatever was in the barn tried to kill them. They had lost 2 goats already, and the vet told them that they were likely frightened to death. Approaching the barn, you could see that they had been at work putting their decorative style here also. From the outside, there was a new fence surrounding the front and creating a small yard of about 1/4 of an acre. It was also clean and recently raked. The barn was in the style of an old tobacco barn that had been repurposed and painted. As we entered, I noticed that the hair on my arms immediately stood up. I definitely sensed something here. I asked if there was a specific area where there seemed to be more activity. I was shown the milking room that they had set up. The man told me that once he built the milking stall, everything started. I asked for some time to poke around by myself and noticed that they practically ran out. I walked around the milking room for about an hour. That was a lot since it was a small room. On the opposite side of the barn, I found another room slightly larger than the milking room. It had a concrete floor and freshly paneled and painted walls. It had electricity, a sink, and some equipment that recognized as being used to make cheese. This room did not interest me at all. It felt sterile and uncomfortable, like an operating room. I was sure nothing was lurking there. It wasn't until I was walking around in the stable area that I really felt something. This part of the barn had only a dirty floor, and although it raked clean, it did not feel that way. I'm not a psychic, but I have learned to pay attention to my body and my impressions. To be honest with you, all that I wanted to do in that area was rake it clean myself. Perplexed, I summoned the man and asked him if he had found anything in that area. He seemed slightly embarrassed as he explained that along the wall there had been a deep trench with something that looked like a pile of old leather that had been folded and stacked at one end of it. He asked me not to tell his wife, but he had just covered it over instead of removing it, as he had just felt like it was too dirty to touch. I asked for a shovel and assured him that I would not tell his wife and cover it back up when I was finished. He agreed and provided a shovel before hurrying back to the house. 5 minutes later, I had located the leather. As the man had claimed, it was all dried hard, and it did look as if it was nothing that anyone would ever want to touch. As I fought to unwrap it, I felt struck with the feeling that it may cause me to get sick. I felt nauseated as I handled it. Finally getting it unfolded, I found a very old memo-type book in it. The writing was still perfectly legible. It was a journal written by a Civil War soldier. As I scanned through it about halfway through, I found the last page of writing. It had blood on it and said, "When you find me and read this, please tell Ma and Pa I'm sorry. I tried to make it back home, but they caught me. I was shot and I know I will die quick. Please get my body home and bury me by the stream. I live in Savannah. Signed, Jonas." I refilled the hole and took the journal and leather to the front of the house. I asked the couple to come sit on the porch so that we could talk. I showed them the journal and suggested that we hold a small memorial service in the barn. They invited the only neighbors they knew, and we did just that in the barn, by where I dug up the journal. I also take the journal with me, and the couple agreed. I took the journal to the Savannah Historical Society and asked if they would keep it on display as a remembrance to a lost son. They agreed and I gave it to them. 3 weeks later, when I checked back with the couple, I was informed that the goats were back in the barn and there were no issues. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please let me know which one was your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And if you'd like to support the channel, there is a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee link down below, along with a link to buy my book. I'm a horror writer, so you might enjoy that. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing night, day, or whatever. Just have fun. Until next time, bye bye.